And I got to go out and oh, good. I got to go out into schools yesterday in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I saw some kids. They had like bodies and some work, and I was just really enthusiastic about the work that y'all are doing in science education. So my Jolene asked me to share with her some claims, evidence, and reasoning statements, ideas, as well as trying to connect it to constructed short responses. And I'm going to tell you right now, Melissa Brown's better at that than me. So I'm going to call on her midway because we had that conversation in August when I was visiting a New Braunfels school, and she had some insight on that. So just you're on the hook, Melissa, to share that. And I'm also going to connect it to phenomena because I think we can't really talk about evidence without talking about phenomena. And I'm going to share a couple of slides with you that I've put together as I've thought about how this new information is important and how it's connected. If you know my work, I always try to get the big idea and then work the small pieces in where they fit. So it's called a global learner. I want to know where I'm going and then how all the pieces and parts go together to get me to that destination. And so that's what I've been thinking about with this phenomena and claims, evidence, and reasoning statements, and constructed response questions, and a few other things, recurring themes and concepts, as well as science and engineering practices. So we'll put all that together for you a little bit, and you will have the PowerPoint. Somehow we're going to get the PowerPoint to you. I tried to drop it in the chat. It's too big. So we'll figure out a way to get it to you so you can share it or study it. It's not scripted, so you just have to look at the slides to figure it out. So let me take the screen and I will share my, just to make sure I'm sharing this with y'all, and we will get going. I cannot, you're seeing the wrong ones. I have to do a new share. We want to share this one. Okay, I think you can see it better now. Yeah, you've got the right one. I can't see you, and so if you have a question, just shout out and ask your question so that I will answer your question in real time. The only silly question is the question that doesn't get asked. All right, so in the chat, let me make sure in the chat, they're going to drop in this three-piece document, three-page PDF, and most of the information that I'm sharing with you today is from this document. It's put together in 2016. It's a really nice document explaining phenomena, how they could be used in lessons and in units, and this is my go-to resource. You always want to go to a seminal document. You want to go to a document that's put out by the, Achieve or Next Generation Science Standards kinds of stuff. And so you don't let someone else filter that information for you. So that's that document. Another place that you might want to go for information would be to some of these books. So this book, What's Your Evidence? The blue one is for K4, K5. I've got regularly quote from this book. It's been out for a while. The claims, questions, and evidence book, that's K8's been out even longer. And then the supporting grade 5 through 8 students, constructing explanations in science, it's been out for a while. But these are written by really profound, real respected science educators. And so if you want to go deeper, I would recommend these books to you. Or I would recommend one of the papers I wrote, which has been dropped into the chat for you. It was published in 2016, written with 5 Texas teachers, and it's creating opportunities for students to practice speaking and writing about science. I've learned a lot since this paper was written and published, but it's a good place to begin if you want to start with a practitioner point of view and just read a few pages, not read an entire book. All right, phenomena. Natural phenomena are observable events that occur in the universe and that we can use which we use our science knowledge to explain or predict. Let's remember what the definition of science is. Science is the study of or asking questions about the natural world, providing evidence-based explanations. Or science is the study or asking questions about phenomena, providing evidence-based explanations. So it's hard to talk about claims, evidence, and reasoning statements without bringing in phenomena, because what we ultimately want the students to do if they're doing real science in our classrooms is to be introduced to some phenomena and engage, go to some type of activity, investigation, and explore where they're learning about something related to the phenomena, And then they could, during the explain, use the information that they learned in the explore to provide evidence that might explain how the phenomena works, what the phenomena is. Phenomena can be at the lesson level, but it can also be at a unit level. You'll see that different curriculum designers have written curriculum around different levels of phenomena. But ultimately, what we want the students to be able to do in a science classroom is use their science information to explain a phenomena. And that's why science isn't right or wrong. We don't have right and wrong answers in science. We have evidence that we can use to support a claim. And as that evidence becomes more refined, or we find more evidence, then we refine our claim. So the claim wasn't wrong. We just had, it's been refined. It's been revised as new evidence came to light. And we failed generally as science educators in this called scientific literacy. And we know we failed as a result of the chaos that ensued during COVID, and the way that people were able to misunderstand how science works. As more information came to light, the phenomena was COVID-19, the virus. As more information about it came to light, they were able to refine their claims with this new evidence. And so we want our students to understand that real science is done this way. It's not a list of truth or facts to be memorized and regurgitated back on a test, but rather it's a way of looking at the natural world, the phenomena, and providing evidence-based explanations for how that phenomena works. So the goal of science education, or the goals, is building knowledge in science to develop general ideas based on evidence that can explain or predict phenomena. All right, now here's an old graphic. It's from 2008. It's put together by Randy Bell. So science is really three things. Science is a body of knowledge. Science is a set of methods and practices. And science is a way of knowing. Now, with the 3D teaching, we're able to bring all of these pieces and parts of science together. So the body of knowledge is the disciplinary core ideas. So it's TCES 6 through 13. The set of methods and practices are the science and engineering practices, which is TCES 1 through 4. And then the way of knowing is the recurring themes and concepts, which is TCES 5. So our new 2024 TCES are so much better than the ones that we had in 2018 or 2010, because they bring in this whole picture of science. And so it's important for us as we train our teachers to use the science and engineering practices in every lesson, and to use recurring themes and concepts in every lesson, that they understand why. So science is three things. It's a body of knowledge, it's a set of methods and practices, and it's a way of knowing. And these three parts of science are connected by phenomena. And that's the piece that for me was a huge aha. So where does phenomena fit in this? We use phenomena to help us understand the methods and practices. We use those things to understand the disciplinary core ideas. And we use the disciplinary core ideas to then better understand patterns, to better understand cause and effect, to better understand systems and models. And so they're tightly connected, and our new TCES have a great, were well thought out, and they present them in an interesting way. But I loved when I was able to see how this all went together. It clicked for me. So hopefully this is an aha for y'all. You might want to study that a little bit. The actual document I've manipulated because it said cross-cutting concepts, and I had to change that a little bit. All right, so despite their centrality to science and engineering, phenomena have been a missing piece in science education, which too often focused on teaching general knowledge that students had difficulty applying in real-world contexts. So in order to better understand the phenomena, we have to do science. But to talk about the phenomena and to explain the phenomena, we need to use claims, evidence, and reasoning. So you might have a curriculum that you've adopted that has steps for how to use claims, evidence, and reasoning. Use that if you want. I prefer my own. I worked for a really long time to try to understand claims, evidence, and reasoning. For like a year, I couldn't figure out how to write the reasoning. And then I went to a workshop at a National Science Teacher Association meeting in Chicago, and I learned it in about 2 minutes. And I was like, oh, why have I been making this so hard? And then I came back and I looked at all the sentence stems and I realized for me, the sentence stems were too complicated. So this is the sentence stem that I use in my methods classes. I claim, that's the C. So I claim, and that answers a question. So here's my C. And then my E is the evidence. And because it becomes a really important word, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, I claim blank. If we're talking about insulators and conductors, I claim that an eraser is an electrical insulator because what's my evidence? When I dropped it into a circuit, the light bulb did not come on. All right, so that's my evidence or the data from my investigation. Then the R, this piece is what I really struggled with. And this whole section here is the R. And the R is the reasoning. So why does this make sense? So how does the claim and the evidence, how are they connected? And they're connected by the definition of the science concept that you're talking about, or maybe the lesson objective, maybe a statement from the TCES, maybe the science concept they're trying to learn. Maybe they have to do research and go to an authoritative source. So if I was talking again about my eraser as an electrical insulator, I claim. The question is the eraser an electrical insulator or conductor? I claim that the rubber eraser is an electrical insulator because when I put it in a circuit, the light bulb did not, or when I added it to a circuit, the light bulb did not come on. My claim is valid because I'm going to go to the definition of what an electrical insulator is. My claim is valid because electrical insulators block the flow of electrical energy. When I put the eraser in the electrical circuit, it blocked the flow of electrical energy. So I like to use the definition of the concept that the students are working on. So, but you can also, there's options for the R. If I was doing electrical insulators and electrical conductors, the R for every electrical insulator in that, that investigation would be the same. It's the definition of what is an electrical insulator. And the R, the reasoning for all of the electrical conductors would be the same. They allow the flow of electrical energy. My claim is valid because electrical conductors allow the flow of electrical energy in a circuit. And when I put the paper clip in the circuit, the light bulb went on, so the electrical energy was flowing. So the R's sometimes feel repetitive, but that's because if you're using the definition, every object that meets that criteria is going to have the same definition. So I use this as my claims, evidence, and reasoning statement. And I believe that this statement, this claims, evidence, and reasoning sentence stem statement is the only one you need in a classroom. I know that a lot of the curriculum have specific sentence stems for individual lessons, and that's fine. But if you just train the kids to use the claims, evidence, and reasoning statement, it works for all science lessons. It's going to work, and it works across content areas as well. I have for example, well, I'll give you an example in a little bit in the PowerPoint. So it's also in the standards. So it's standards based. So TEK 3 at all the elementary school grade levels requires us to look for evidence-based explanations and communicate those findings and conclusions. So A, develop explanations and propose solutions supported by data and models. B, communicate explanations. Claims, evidence, and reasoning, CER, it is a scientific explanation. Actually, I'm going to go back to the slide and I'm going to come out. Well, this equals, I'll just do it like this, equals an explanation. Okay, so a claims, evidence, and reasoning statement is a science explanation. And I'm just going to write explain here. So I'm not so good at that. Well, actually, I have to just move my toolbar here. Move my toolbar and I can see it. Okay. That's an A. All right, that's typing with my mouse. And I'm sorry that I've got cursive. I'll try to make that cursive so it looks a little better, and print. So claims, evidence, and reasoning equals a scientific explanation. So if you are writing claims, evidence, and reasoning statements, then you have scientific explanations. You want to communicate those explanations, so the students need to write it and they need to speak it. And so it's important in your classroom that you start to model using claims, evidence, and reasoning statements in the oral discourse that you have in your classroom, as well as the written discourse. So there's two types of vocabulary in classrooms. There's productive vocabulary and receptive vocabulary. Receptive vocabulary is when the students receive information, and that's through reading and through listening. And then there's productive vocabulary, which is from speaking and writing. So we want the kids producing this language, producing scientific explanations as much as we can. It's part of the TEAC, right? This communicating findings is important. And then we want the students to listen actively. So TEAC 3C, listen actively to other explanations and identify important evidence. So using claims, evidence, and reasoning statements is solid science, but it's also TEAC aligned, which is really, really cool. My grandson, who's now a sophomore in high school, when he was in first grade, said, I asked him to take out the garbage. He said, sure, it's my favorite word. And I said, oh, that's my favorite word. And he said, well, my favorite word is claim, because it means I'm right. And this was a long time ago. This is 2016. Remember, we're still learning about stuff. So it's many years ago. And he said, my teacher's favorite word is because. Oh, your teacher's favorite word is because, and your favorite word is claim. Y'all are doing claims, evidence, and reasoning statement in first grade. So I went and talked to his teacher, Mrs. Durham, and she told me that because is her favorite word, and she uses it across all content areas. She said, I used to use the word why to get students to extend or explain their thinking, but this year I've been using the word because, and I use it as a question. And these are the only sentences she had in her classroom at the time. Because, as a question, was introduced the first day of school, written on a word strip and placed in front of the class, and why is seldom used. Because, as a question, is non-threatening. It prompts discussion. It's an invitation for the students to tell the teacher more, to elaborate upon ideas, or to support claims, statements with evidence. Because, as a question, is less stressful. Because, as a question, invites students to finish a sentence, not answer a question. And for some students, answering a question can be scary, but continuing a conversation isn't scary at all. So one of the changes that we need to make as we're trying to support claims, evidence, and reasoning statements conversations in our classroom is to remove the word why from our practice and replace it with the word because. So if you're checking for understanding and the student makes a statement, you say, you've made a claim because what's your evidence? You don't say, why did you say that? No, we're going to say because, and then they're going to answer. And then you're framing claims, evidence, and reasoning statements in your discourse. So when you ask them to write it, it's much, much easier. All right, now we're going to practice a little bit with this book. You don't have to buy the book, but it's How Artists See Weather. It's a cool little book. And all you need to do is find great works of art. Now, here's our claims, evidence, and reasoning STEM. Now, this is how I teach my students. And when I'm doing a professional development, this is how I teach teachers or introduce them to claims, evidence, and reasoning statements. So looking at this great work of art by Andrew Wyeth, what type of weather was the artist trying to convey? So the students often will say, it's windy, or it's breezy. I'll say, well, I claim, that's all I have to do. I claim, and then they say, I claim that it's windy. Because, what's your evidence? Well, the curtains are moving. Okay. The window's open and the curtains are moving. Great. I claim that the weather is windy because the window's open and the curtains are moving. That's my evidence. My claim is valid. What's your lived experience? What's the definition? Because when I have my windows open and it's windy outside, the curtains move. That's an easy way to do it. Some people say it's dawn, or it's dusk, or it's going to be stormy, and they're looking at the sky. That's not wrong. So there are multiple, it also teaches the students that you can make different claims about the same thing as long as your evidence is valid. So the weather could be stormy. The weather could be, it could be the end of a storm, the beginning of a storm, it could be windy. What's your evidence? And that then helps the students understand why Pluto is a planet, Pluto is not a planet. What's your evidence? Instead of you're right or you're wrong, what's your evidence? It's always got to be your response to your students. Science is about evidence. It's phenomena and evidence. We've got to link them together. So what's your evidence? And here, it's wind from the sea. Kate was trying to portray wind. We don't know if it was dawn or dusk or cloudy or stormy. We don't know. But, and so we would accept all of those if their evidence was valid. This one's an interesting one for me to do. When I'm in Texas, the teachers will always say, or the students say, it's sunny because there are shadows. But I'm also spending a lot of time, a week a month in Florida recently. And so when I'm with Florida teachers, they say windy. And I always find it interesting because a Florida teacher looks to the sea. They look at the waves on the water, and they'll say it's windy. It's just really interesting because that's their lived experience. Our lived experience inland is that it's sunny because there are shadows. No one ever asks where are the steps or why is this house on the water. But it's just room by the sea. We don't know what kind of weather he was trying to portray, but it's an interesting dynamic, and neither one is wrong. You're not right or wrong in science. You have valid or invalid evidence. That's it. Or excuse me, valid or invalid claims based on your evidence. And then we move to this one, and I need two types of pieces of evidence to support your claim about the type of weather. And some people will say it's sunny because people are holding umbrellas to keep the sun off their skin, and there's reflections from the ground, like oh my gosh, I can't even remember. I'm having y'all know when you look out on the road and a mirage, like maybe there's mirages. Other people say it's rainy because people are carrying umbrellas and there's puddles. Some people say it's not rainy because the white dresses aren't dirty. And so we start to have this really rich conversations about what is here. And their claim is not wrong. The claim is not right. It's valid or invalid based on the evidence that they use to support that claim. Now, I will accept both of them if the evidence is valid, supporting their claim, because those dresses are clean, right? And maybe they are mirages. Maybe some people carry umbrellas in sunny days. The artist, however, named it Umbrellas in the Rain, Venice. All right, another one we can't read today. This book, and you might have to tell you a little bit about it. Summer Birds. It's about Marie Marion, true story about a girl who lived in the Middle Ages who collected butterflies. And she makes claims about why the adults are wrong in her world. I'm watching the time. Oh my goodness. Okay, I only have a few more minutes, 4 more minutes. But anyway, the word witch is in here. They thought she would be a witch if she was caught collecting the insects. So I don't know about your school library if they would let you use that or not. That's the one I used to use. All right. So let's talk about real quick, Melissa. I'm going to put you on deck, Melissa Brown. Summer I was in New Braunfels and we had these great conversations about claims, evidence, and reasoning statements and short constructed responses. And Melissa, share with us for about 3 minutes what you told me, if you can remember. You're talking about how the students were taking the short constructed response questions and using claims, evidence, and reasoning statements, but a caution.
Yes. So what we found is that a lot of people, when they're talking about writing, they will automatically connect it to we're doing short constructed responses. But if we look at the prompts of the short constructed responses, they don't always include the explain. And I love the piece where you put on there the CER equals the explanation, because we have seen a few of the short constructed response prompts that say the explain. But if all they're doing is identifying things or identifying pieces, what we had was kids would give their statement, they'd give their claim, but then they would start to go into their evidence and reasoning. But if they gave wrong information, they lost their points. So they gained a point for having erosion and deposition there. But then when they went into something else along with it, where they're saying other pieces to it, their points were taken away. So we're cautioning people that to really look at the prompt and see what it is. Because if it says what's happening and explain it, then it would be perfect. Like this last year in the 2024 prompt for 5th grade, they had to identify the two processes and explain them. But previous years, it was what's a tool you'd use, and I can't remember the other part of it, but if they'd go into, I would use a ruler because it's going to measure the distance, that doesn't give them the extra point. Or if they had something wrong, that I'm going to measure how fast it goes, they just lost their point because the ruler's not for speed.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. So one of the changes that we want to see is from not using evidence to construct conclusions to always using evidence to construct valid conclusions. So start easy, start with the great works of art, or maybe this book, Summer Birds. But again, I use it all the time. And it's a true story, so it's fact, but what is the artist trying to convey? Let them start with something that's pretty straightforward before you move it into an investigation where it could be a little, maybe more, they have to make some inferences. So we want to begin to use evidence to construct valid conclusions with our students. This is my skin in the game. Those of you that have been with me for a while have been following the growth and the maturity of my grandkids. The boys have been part of my presentation since they were in kindergarten. They're now sophomores in high school. Brighton's in 7th grade and Bristol's in 2nd grade. And so this is my skin in the game. And I want to thank each of you for everything that you do to support the science instruction in your districts and with your students, because there's nanas and grandmas and mimis everywhere, and moms and dads that care very much about the experience that their students are getting. So thank you for what you do. You're my heroes, and I appreciate the opportunity to get to spend some time with you. So I'll turn it back to you all for the I don't know, the some whatever you guys have. You have to do something. You have to fill out some forms.
Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Jackson, so much for the wonderful knowledge you have shared. I think we just got lots of stuff in the chat, people. So thankful. Can you share, someone asked about the book that you shared with the art. Can you just show that on the screen again real quick? How Artists See the Weather. Laura Lee, I think that was by Snow. Oh, okay. So you're on mute, Dr. Jackson.
There's some really cool ones in here. My favorite one is Kandensky, which is thunder. I didn't give it to y'all. It's one of my favorite. This one. That's thunder. So, but just Google great works of art and weather. Don't buy the book. Save you some money.
We have the internet now. Yeah, amazing what we can accomplish. Okay, so with that, we're going to start just kind of wrapping things up. So once again, we are the Texas Council of Elementary Science. This was our September virtual collaborations, we're calling these. So we really do hope that you enjoyed being able to connect with your adoption vendors, got some more just creating those spaces for you guys to connect and learn more about the materials that you're using in your classroom, and then also our wonderful presentation from Dr. Jackson. Like I said, I know my wheels are really spinning right now, just trying to think about all the different things I want to just sink my teeth into. So thank you once again so much. So if you could, this is a QR code. And I believe Melissa has the link as well. So if you could, this is our closing. I know it's a few minutes early. We'll stay on till 4:45. If anyone has a question, we'll hold you hostage a little bit, Dr. Jackson. If someone has a question, they can come off mute or put it in the chat. But for those of you teachers who spent the whole day teaching and just want to go home and have some dinner, please go start your commutes and get home to your families. But once again, thank you guys so much for coming this afternoon. And once again, thank you, Dr.
Thank you. Whatever questions you have. So I'm going to email the PowerPoint to you, Jolene. I think I was, oh yeah.
Yep.
And either maybe a Google Drive link or something. I'll figure out a way to get it to you. It's a little bit big file. I guess that's why I'm going to try to drop it in the chat one more time.
Julie, this isn't a question, but just some kudos to you in the cross-curricular connections that you have brought out in this presentation today. I love that you used both art and literature to use examples for how teachers can teach students how to write those statements, and I love the sentence stem as well. So just love the way you presented that. Makes it so that just about any teacher teaching anything can practice this in their classrooms.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I always think that my problem with CER was that I started out with a really hard one, right? And I always think that we need to start simply and make it harder, because it's got to be much more complicated in middle school and high school. But for elementary school, if we could do this every time, it'd be amazing. Miss Durham, who I wrote the paper with, had her kids doing it across all content areas. They had a substitute come to class and they say, we claim it's time for lunch because our class schedule says 11:40.
That's awesome.
Right, because the clock says 11:40.
That's
and
fantastic.
I claim today I'm going to have a salad for lunch because it's on the list of healthy things. It was just sweet. Everything they did was claims, evidence, and reasoning. The 2nd grade teacher didn't do it. And now they're sophomores in high school and they're still trying to figure it out again. And so
the starting simple is the key, is what it sounds like for teachers. That's awesome.
Yeah. And so that paper is old, but I had 5 teachers I think 4 or 5 teachers around Texas helped me with that. And it's a good paper. But anyway.
Did you share that with us, or?
It's in the chat.
Okay, cool.
It's doesn't have fancy pictures. So it was interesting with Science and Children. I had the November and December Teaching Teachers column in 2016. The first one was interactive word walls, and the next one is how we talk off of the interactive word walls. And we've changed. We used to use I know I'm right because, and then we changed it to my claim is valid because. And if you remember way back then, I think there was a curriculum that said K-1-2 couldn't do it. And so we go, oh, yeah, it's too hard for kindergarten and first and second grade. That's not true. We've all revised our thinking. So there isn't, it's been fun to watch, go back and look at the 2016 stuff and see this evolution of understanding and a learning curve that I followed. And I think we all kind of were on that merry-go-round for a while. But I loved I'm just going to tell you, when I was reading Randy Bell's stuff, he's phenomenal in science education. And then I came across that graphic and I just had an aha. And I tried to share that with my students. They're like deer in headlights. Like, what is she talking about? But anyway, hopefully it makes sense to y'all. Or maybe I'm just, losing my mind.
Dr. Jackson, there was a question in the chat about your teacher by teacher word wall stuff. We sent them to your website, but I don't think your teacher by teacher stuff is working anymore, right?
No, I took it down. I'm embarrassed by that. So I had taken that down, and to full disclosure, I wrote most of the walls. So everybody knows that I'm working for McGraw-Hill now, and I created all the walls for middle school for them, and then I approved all the walls for elementary school, and some of those are very similar to what I had done, and I didn't know about copyright rules and stuff, so I had taken everything off of teacher pay teacher. What I'm thinking about doing is putting it out on my website for free on the ones that I created that are a little bit different. I can't do it for middle school because I don't see it. That's what I did, right? I mean, so I actually made all the middle school ones. I can do them for the elementary ones, but it's been, well, so yeah, I took it down. Let me say it a different way. It's, I didn't pay my subscription, so it's on hold because they charge you to have those sites.
Yeah, so and Melissa, I wanted to pull up. I knew exactly. I had just last week, I think Sherry, you were with me at that school we were at, talking about with the teachers, talking about this prompt specifically from the short constructed response from STAR last week. And so we were just talking about, and Melissa, I think kind of what you were saying. So even like this is the answer that TEA said was like the correct answer.
But if you go look at their, so this is the one when she said CER equals explanation, I went, oh, this is where we could include it. A previous year we wouldn't have it, but did you look at the short constructed response grading?
Oh, I have that link up.
Because according to the grading, they also took weathering.
Oh, they did?
But there's not weathering happening in there. But the way this one was worded to me, the explanation would be a part of it. But in the previous year where it was the truck where the marbles were rolling down and it was what tool would you use?
Yeah.
That's where
we looked
mine
at that one
lost
too.
it because they said a ruler to measure how fast it goes. Well, when you get the ruler, if all they had said was ruler, they would have gotten 1 point. But when they started to go into a ruler because it's the distance, they would have still only gotten 1 point. But as soon as they said how fast it goes with the wrong information, they lost that 1 point. So we teach ours to one, identify what's in the prompt to be answered. But then also we teach them to keep it simple. You get in, you say your answer, and you get out for the short constructed response.
That's hilarious. Get in and get out.
That's what we've been, and that's what we're like, our ELA teachers are trying to get us into that too, where it's like, just say your answer and give some evidence. I know reasoning, like Dr. Jackson said, that is kind of the thing for adults to wrap their brains around before children can wrap their brains around it. So we're kind of scaffolding it out, saying like, just first things first, let's write a complete sentence. There's your claim. And then now how do you know that? So I like these sentence stems, like my claim is true because, like that because statement is fantastic for evidence. And then eventually we'll lead into the reasoning where they can start to tie in those scientific principles. So we're kind of scaffold, like right now, like my teachers are a little more nervous about the whole thing. So I've said, hey, let's just, like you said, let's keep it simple. Let's answer the question coherently and provide some evidence. And then we'll work a little bit later on getting the reasoning statement going.
we still have them do the claims evidence reasoning and still in their conversations give their reasoning why and their explanations and everything. But when it comes to on the test for short constructed response, you get in, you say what they want, and then you get out, pretty much. But in the
No,
conversations of the reasonings, you're hearing misconceptions, you're hearing all the things whether or not they've got it. So we want those explanations and them thinking about it. Just don't put it down on the test unless it asks for it.
I
Dr.
was
Jackson, do
able to-
you?
Go
Oh,
ahead.
I was
Just
gonna-
one second. I was able
Yep.
to get the PowerPoint in the chat, so y'all can grab it out now.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Do you recommend in K1 to when we're starting with these to do them orally, kind of oral rehearsal first, or straight into writing?
Oh, oral rehearsal. Well, first of all, it doesn't matter which one you do first, speaking or writing, because for some kids, writing is easier than speaking, and for some kids, speaking is easier than writing. I got corrected on that because I always think writing is the hardest thing to do, but I was corrected, and maybe for you, Julie, but for me, it's harder to speak because I'm concerned about my accent. That was what someone told me. I was like, oh man, I never considered that. Um, so and also with think about this with think pair share, we want to add a writing component to that, so it can be think ink, then share it with your pair, and then think ink pair share, or think pair ink share, where they're going to first write something then share it with their partner, or they're going to get with their partner, talk about it, then write something. It doesn't matter if you write or talk first, but I think it's really important when you're talking with kids to never say the word why anymore. You made a claim because, and you just keep doing that and never use why. I mean, almost never. Take why out of your practice. And once you have that patterned response, question response, then when they go to talk themselves or write themselves, it's familiar. So I think the place to start would be in teacher conversations, in a discussion where the teacher's leading a discussion, in explain, asking students about their experiences. What did you experience in this? And it's going to be simpler in kindergarten than it's going to be in 12th grade. But I know they can do it, and they can do it well, because my grandkids were doing it 8 years ago in first grade really, really well. And she only had, go back to that slide, she only had 4 sentence strips. I claim because she decorated her room with the word because in different colors and different fonts on word strips. She had them all around her room. And because is my favorite word. We're going to use because. When you use because, I'm going to get excited. And it just was this, there's not owls, there's not chevrons, there's not ladybugs. We're going to talk about because. And it's my favorite word. And then, and in English language arts, it's important to have, text evidence and to support your ideas with evidence. Math, it's important, and it's important in science. So it really crosses all content areas. It's just a best practice. So I would start it with the teacher discussions. I would have a PD with my teachers right away and say, let's bury the word why, and let's replace it with the word because as a question. And you save time, because you don't have to back out and say, I asked you why because you were right. Because the kids will say, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. They didn't expect to be challenged because they knew they were right. And then they wonder about themselves. You've made a claim because as a question. It's really magical. I use it with my adults. Well, in Zoom, they're just like, we're not going to unmute. I guess it's not really magical anymore. But in my foggy memory of when I was with humans, it was fun to do. So, and Miss Durham taught me that. The first grade teacher taught me that a long time ago. So again, writing versus speaking, it depends on the person and the confidence they have with that content area. So, I don't know. It's a good question. So collect some data and we can write about it.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you.
All right. Are you in Northwest in Dallas or in San Antonio?
The DFW area.
Oh, okay. All right. One of my students' parent works in north. Oh, it's Northeast San Antonio. My bad.
There's
Wrong
San
direction.
Antonio has Northeast, also North Side. So there's a lot of us. But yes, I'm impressed that you knew that there were 2. That just makes my heart so
Oh,
happy.
I presented at your district once at that fancy high school named after the golfer.
Oh yes, Byron Nelson. Yeah.
It looks like a an Ivy League college.
They did do very nicely on the design on that one. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it's beautiful. All right. So any other questions?
So Julie, all of the files that you shared with us, it's in that one Google Drive that we shared out to all of our members or those that joined the webinar. So thank you so much.
Welcome. And I didn't copyright anything on the slides. Those are pretty much in the common domain. I might get in trouble with the great works of art, but I did put the book in there, and I do have the book. So I felt okay sharing that, not to get copyright problems for anybody. So, and if they think they just put like Metropolitan Museum of Art or something like that on the bottom, they can probably share it. I don't know that the copyright police are coming, but I'm getting more concerned about that. Since y'all are in district positions, I don't want anybody to get in trouble. So just share it out however you can, and let me know what else I can do to help you. You're doing great stuff.
Thank you,
And
Dr.
I'm
Jackson.
telling the McGraw-Hill people that they're not on this call.
I
saw everybody else. I'm like, where are they?
Yes, Julie, I will tell them.
Yeah, I'm meeting with Mindy tomorrow, or them tomorrow. So
I had
have
to,
a Zoom with them at noon.
I had to facilitate the breakout room, but I had all the Padlets and the data